Hey. What are you doing? Yeah, I don't think we have to do that. I don't think this is big enough to do that. Yeah, that's fine. Did you coordinate with Lindsay on that? But I need that agreement because the way that they what you agree. So. Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm sure she'll be fine. As long as you tell her about it right away and are not stepping on her toes, I think she'll be fine. Okay, that works. The agreement for new member coffee hours, I need the 4 memberships that we're giving away. I need their first and last names, email addresses, all their contact information. I need everything. It might make sense to put all of them on an email to me because I'm going to manually enter them. Yes. All right, sounds good. Okay. Okay. Okay, wait. Get down. Get down. There you go. That's good. That's good. Yes.
That's where my dog likes to lay too.
Thank you all for joining early. We're gonna give it a couple minutes as folks continue to join on.
Thank you.
That product.
Hey, Danielle, it's great to see you. Thanks for joining. We're gonna get started in a couple minutes here.
For
I
sure.
will.
Kyle, how's my audio? Is it okay?
Sound great.
Okay, good. I had an issue earlier, so I wanted to check if I needed to swap speakers. No problem. I'll hang out. Take your time. No worries.
Cool, thanks. Again, thanks everyone for being here. We're gonna give it a couple more minutes as folks continue to join on. Alrighty, well, we have a couple announcements, so we could go ahead and get started. Alexis, if you could just continue to watch as folks continue to join in. Sweet. Thanks. Alrighty. Well, thank you all for being here today. My name is Kyle Biederwolf, and I'm the Professional Development Chair of the Young Professionals of Albuquerque. We have a very exciting event today with a very exciting speaker, but we have a couple of housekeeping items first. As you see in the top left corner, we're going to be recording this video, so if you don't want to be recorded, you could go ahead and turn your video off now. Thank you. One of the things that I really miss about having in-person events is getting to meet a bunch of new folks. So I would encourage everybody at this time to go to the chat and just introduce yourself and tell us where you work and how you found out about the event today. And everyone, please just stay on mute as Danielle is going through her presentation. We're going to have a time at the end for Q&A. But if you do have a question throughout and you don't want to forget it, you can go ahead and put it in the chat as well. We have a couple events coming up, a really exciting event at the end of this month on May 27th. It's called, and I wasn't creative enough to come up with this name, but Chomping at the Bitcoin, is it jesting or investing? We've teamed up with the CFA Society of New Mexico to host an event that's going to dive into blockchains, cryptocurrencies, and really how it can affect young professionals. Dr. Riley White from the Anderson School of Management is going to be presenting. And if you've never heard Riley speak before, you're not going to want to miss it. He's incredible. I'll post the link to this event here shortly. And we're also doing a grant giveaway in YPA. We're currently accepting applications for a $12,000 grant to serve or to give to a nonprofit serving the Albuquerque metro area. We're still accepting applications for this grant, and I'll be sure to post the link in the chat here shortly again. And last, I want to make sure that everyone here knows we will be hosting our June Lunch with Leaders. We're just finalizing the date on that, so be on the lookout. And of course, just want to give a huge shout out to our annual sponsor, Nusenda, for supporting us and making sure that we can have events like this. And now, finally, I'm done. We can hand it over to Danielle. Danielle Casey is the president and CEO of Albuquerque Economic Development. As president, she brings extensive and diverse experience in leadership, public administration, marketing, business development, and retention, and strategic planning, and on and on and on. It seems like Danielle could do everything. She previously served as the executive vice president for the Greater Sacramento Economic Council and oversaw the organization's business development, marketing, and communications, investor engagement, research, and strategic initiatives critical to advancing the economic growth of Sacramento. In May 2010, she was honored as the Economic Developer of the Year Small Community Award from the Arizona Association of Economic Development. And in January 2017, she was recognized as a national top 40 under 40 rising star. So what a great person to come and talk to the young professionals of Albuquerque today. We have a great leader running this amazing organization. And without further ado, it's all yours, Danielle.
Kyle, you've created some expectations I don't know if I can live up to over the lunch hour, but we're going to try. Oh gosh. Hi, everybody. How are you? Wonderful to see you. I've seen all the different names and titles kind of flowing in the chat. So I may a little later have everybody go around. I don't know if you all normally do introductions. If you do, we can do that, or we could kind of skip ahead and I could just expect everybody to, I'll pick on some people later if there's some picking on opportunity, or you can pick on me. I can take it, I promise. All right, I have a couple of slides, so I'm just going to share. This is mainly to keep me emotionally on task, because you know how you can get. Let's see, can you guys see that? And then nothing else. Okay, cool. All right, so I'm going to spread you guys out here. Anyway, well, thank you, Kyle. Thanks for having me. This is an exciting opportunity for me, and I'll kind of get into why that's such an exciting opportunity for me. But you know, hopefully you all got some snacks or something like that. I just scarfed a power bar, so I'm good to go. And all right, well, all right. So Kyle gave me some really great instructions on things to talk about today, some background, some lessons learned, and maybe a little bit of a call to action. So I'm going to try to hit on all of those key points while rambling quite a bit. So just kind of, you know, I'll give you guys some stories on how I got where I got, which is largely completely randomly and on accident. But I think, you know, some of the keys and tips throughout all that keeps you going and maybe, you know, makes it more intentional than you thought it was while you're going through it. So with that, becoming an economic developer, I absolutely had no intention of becoming an economic developer. I didn't know what it was. Most people in my profession don't really, do any of you know what an economic development professional does really to the level of defining it? Kristen does. Do you want to tell us, Kristen?
I do. And that's like the question that I get all the time is, what is economic development? What does it mean? Like, what do we actually do? And then once I tell them, it's like, it's really important. I mean, you know, kind of is the basis for the quality of life here, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm sure that you understand, Danielle, but being in economic development during a global pandemic has been challenging
Yeah.
and busy.
Yeah. Exactly. But you hit the nail on the head, right? Ultimately,
Mhm.
at the end of the day, and the simplest way I like to explain it is, you know, economic developers and economic development organizations, I believe if you're on the right track, your goal and overarching mission and purpose is to make everybody's lives better. How do you do that? How do you raise the quality of life for a community? I mean, that's a hell of a task, right? And so a lot of times that creates expectations. One of the things we're doing right now is going through strategic planning, and I'm reminding people this is economic development, not economic miracles. So we also have to be a little realistic. So, all right, well, I'll take you guys a little bit through how I got here, again, completely unintentionally. You know, I went to school, and when I was going to school, I had actually no idea what I wanted to do, but sometimes your career chooses you. I did not become a dancer. I did not become a mass murderer, as far as anybody knows. But here's me as a kid, so you can just get a little bit of a sense. All right, well, I'll talk a little bit about how I fell into the profession, which is truly it. I was a military brat. So everybody's like, well, where are you from? And my answer is always, well, gee, I don't know. let me tell you about where all I've been. So I was born in Texas, and then the Air Force took us to Texas, Ohio, Alabama, Louisiana. It's like I should have done a song for this. Louisiana, and then for other reasons outside the military, I ended up following my mom and stepdad to Salt Lake and then to Arizona. So while I was in my undergrad, I started at Louisiana State, then I went to University of Utah, and then I went to ASU. So I will tell you, if there's not a lesson in adaptability, I don't know what is. Anyway, so yeah, I'm an amateur electrician and a very poor golfer. You have to also golf when you're in any kind of role that's tremendously weighted in business development and interaction there, and also, you know, charities and fundraisers. So I'm really good at a scramble. I've got some outfits and clubs, and that's where it ends. But you know, I'll pick up around from the drink cart if you need me to. But really, you know, so I do those kinds of things. Yeah, I somebody asked me this week, what do you do for fun? And I said, well, economic development is so much fun. Why would I do anything else but focus on my profession? But in reality, I really love doing stuff around the house and like refinishing furniture and fixing things. And so I'm kind of handy. And at the end of the day, it is just me and an English bulldog named Sophie, and she's pretty rad. So if you ever hear anybody snoring in the back, I'm actually at the office today, but if there's anybody snoring in the background when I'm working from home, it is likely the bulldog. But a little bit about the career path, right? So again, I had no idea what I wanted to do or what I wanted to be. I really love museums, so I got an anthropology degree at ASU. I thought the anthropology people were really cool and fun. They hung out at a fun bar called Casey Moore's that was really, really exciting. Had great oysters. But anyway, you know, you kind of do that and you go, okay, well, what do I want to do? I did know that I love nonprofit work and I love things that just really fascinated and engaged me. And I went to school to learn, as a lot of people do, right? I really think a bachelor's degree teaches you to learn and teaches you to work, as opposed to necessarily, I don't think there's anything I learned that I actually took with me. It certainly wasn't my my Spanish 101, because that went right out the window. I'm absolutely terrible. I blame my family because my grandmother was from San Antonio and spoke Spanish, nothing but Spanish till she was 18, and then wouldn't teach me. So anyway, so I got an anthropology degree from ASU, and you can do the math, but this was 2001. So guess what happens? You want to work in museums and tourism in an industry that has a lot of travelers, and people fly planes into a tower. So here I am, I just graduated and I'm trying to work in the museum world, and the entire tourism industry, travel industry crashes because of 9/11. So in fact, it's funny, I was talking to, you know, some of my team and other folks, even anytime over the past year, and you know, the closest thing I can associate with the experience with COVID, except it's been this drug on thing, was going through 9/11 as a young adult, which was just scary as hell because, you know, we forget really quickly there was all that tragedy. And then here we are paranoid for months and months on end that we're all going to get anthraxed or they're going to hit something else. So it was really a troubling time. So somehow, stroke of luck, I actually got hired at a museum like 3 weeks after 9/11 hit. They actually hadn't felt the impact yet. So I got lucky. Thought I was going to be this little Indiana Jones, and realized that I'm again, not a good golfer, which means I'm also not super coordinated or athletic, and probably would have broken a 3,000-year-old pot. You know, but at the end of the day, I'd had a full-time job since I was, 15, and I'd done a lot of kind of general management in restaurants and things like that all through school, because I wanted to have my own apartment. And so long story short, they put me in charge of all the front desk people and threw me into the marketing and fundraising department. And again, you kind of just, sometimes if you're willing to work hard and you're energetic and things excite you, you just kind of learn stuff. And I'll tell you, there's no better way to learn to do PR and copy edit than have the marketing team at a whole museum redline your first promotional brochure that you think looks so great, to the point where it's nothing but red ink. I'm in the corner with tears, but I learned. And so, I think about some of those big lessons back when, and how impressionable they were, but what a difference they made in my career. And so I guess this is one of my comments, that the people that were the hardest on me, but for good intentions, were some of the ones that I remember the most. And the ones that let me slide are the ones that, I don't remember as much. So anyway, so here I am at the Heard Museum. Did some great nonprofit work, and, being young, kind of drove to qualify and bought a house on the outskirts, and then was tired of driving all the way downtown Phoenix. It was about 45 minutes from downtown, and big housing boom. So I was fortunate enough to get hired on as the 12th employee ever for this little city that had just been incorporated. And it was about 5,000 people at the time. And City Hall was 18 months old, and it was in a double wide trailer next to the volunteer fire station that was also a double wide trailer next to a field. So long story short, my first 6 months there, they're like mice would run across my feet while we're trying to start up this city. I had zero clue what I was doing, but they hired me on as an assistant to the city manager, and we figured it out. And these were third generation farmers that the county had entitled so many homes in master plan development communities, because again, housing boom, that it built out without any new entitlements. It would have been 150,000 residents. So okay, that's no joke. That's a real city. That's a significant city. So we're all sitting around going, okay, well, I guess we should probably figure out an economy, because we're out here in the middle of nowhere, this big housing boom sandwiched between two tribal communities. So tribal relationships are a really big deal. So it's the Arizona desert, floodplain issues. If any of you work in, land use planning or development, you'll kind of get what I'm talking about. So we're figuring all this out, and I got thrown into economic development literally because nobody else had the time on their calendar to go figure out what the Chamber of Commerce was doing. Found out later that they had zero funding and didn't even actually have nonprofit status. So they were operating illegally for years. But they'd been meeting at a bar out in the country where John Wayne used to frequent, So it's, again, so I share all this to kind of share, I've got pretty humble, fun, rural roots in the communities I've worked in. It was a great experience and opportunity. I was there a little over 8 years, and fortunate enough, again, great mentors that pushed me and gave me the opportunity to get training, get my master's. So I worked my butt off. We were working, 12, 14 hours a day in those times, because we're standing up a city. And then I thought it would be cool to get my master's degree in public administration, and also try to get certified as an economic developer, which is kind of the bar for economic developers, or like an AICP for a planner or something else. So really proud of that. I don't know that I have the energy or could do all that now. I like to think I would, but I would just say, again, anybody is willing to invest in you, and even if they don't offer it, ask people to invest in your education and for you to grow those resources and be a lifelong learner, because it's been huge for me. And doing it sooner in my career was also a big boom. So anyway, so accidentally got into economic development, did that work, left the city right after we built a $10 million city hall, and we're starting our first regional industrial park and other things. And I had the opportunity to go work in Scottsdale as their economic development director. And I was really fascinated by the opportunity to go into a market that had a ton of Class A space, really big companies that were very cool to integrate with. And Scottsdale's kind of it's got a, it's got a really wonderful reputation and kind of a mystique about it. For a lot of the same ways that New Mexico and the Land of Enchantment does, which again, to me, draws a really, really great parallel. I mean, I feel very at home here already. And I think because of a lot of those common threads. On the flip side, though, I think because I was a military kid, it's made me very adaptable to a level where I understand that when you come into a community new, you have to respect it and do your best to learn and understand the culture and the values and what's going on, and then work within that and learn, as opposed to come in and go, well, boy, I've been other places, so I know everything. That's the kiss of death, and it's just stupid. It's again, respecting and appreciating the local culture is what makes a place, so it gives it such a special place in your heart. Anyway, I could go on that. Anyway, so again, continue to pursue economic development and all those things. And so that was really a transition from rural service to an urban community. And again, got to work on a lot of fun projects there, working with our regional economic development group in Greater Phoenix as a colleague and a partner, working with Arizona State on some really, really amazing public-private partnerships for innovation in the region, and really watching how they transformed intentionally the economy of Phoenix over 15, 20-year period, from one that was largely, and you all will this will resonate, right? Lots of call centers, lots of data centers, to how do we intentionally shift that to middle office, to higher level paying jobs, to regional corporate offices and headquarters, and then things that are very, very strong in innovation. So they're doing a great job there. None of that was accidental. It was all very, very intentional, and I know we can do the same thing here, and I'm excited to do it. So after all that, then finally, prior to coming to Albuquerque, I was working in Scottsdale, and we were having all kinds of fun and doing great stuff. And I finished up a big project, which was a big incentive reimbursement deal with the Arizona State Land Department that kept and expanded Nationwide Insurance's Western. They called it the Western Regional Headquarters, and I'm like, that's an oxymoron. Regional headquarters, whatever. But it was basically all their Western operations. So I think 3,000 employees, and the deal we did got them about $23 million in incentive reimbursement from the city for public infrastructure, and also brought on 2,000 more jobs and got them to speculatively build an additional couple 100,000 square feet of office space. And I'm sure it'll be, even with COVID, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. It'll fill in. It'll be great. But a performance-based deal and things like that I really want to see us do more of here in Greater Albuquerque, New Mexico. But when I left there, it wasn't because, again, I wanted or needed to leave, but the leader who had been leading the Regional Economic Development Group in Greater Phoenix for 10 years, he had been asked to go out to Greater Sacramento because a former basketball player from the Phoenix Suns was now the mayor of Sacramento, and reached out to him and said, Barry, we don't know what we're doing out here. Our economic development regional organization is not functional and too bureaucratic, and we need you to come show us how to build the right model and kind of blow this up. And all of their private business investors in the regional public-private partnership, this nonprofit, essentially defunded it and said, we're going to start over. And so he went out there to tell them how to do it, and ended up getting lured into that community. He also had a pretty strong background in community organizing, especially in disadvantaged communities and areas that were high in poverty. And so it was a passion for him, especially in that market. If you know anything about Sacramento or Northern California, the interesting piece. So anyway, I ran into him at a conference, and he asked me to come out, and he said, look, here's the deal. You come out here and help me reorganize this shop and train the team and get this highly functioning. And then you'll either take over when I leave, or you can you'll be ready to go be a CEO of a regional group anywhere. And, it happened a little faster than I thought. Coming out here is out there 2 years, and this opportunity was sent to me for the Albuquerque Economic Development Inc. position from a friend of mine. We were doing one of those, how many of you have done like emotional check-ins with friends over COVID, right? She's a great friend of mine. We both sit on the board of directors with the International Economic Development Council. So we were doing a check-in last, I guess, June. And I said, how are you doing, Laura? And she burst into tears. Everything sucks. I hate my board. I hate my job. It's COVID. It's horrible. And I'm looking for a job. And I said, oh God, however I can help you. And she said, well, thanks. Actually, a recruiter sent me one that I'm not going to apply for. I'm not interested. I'm a Midwestern girl, but you should look at it, Danielle. And like, what an amazing friend, you know, in like a moment of tragedy, right? And to like actually go, oh, but I have something for you. I'm like, wow, that's pretty awesome. She's another one of those people that I consider a colleague and a mentor at the same time. So she sent me the recruitment for Albuquerque, and I kind of went, what? Like, why would that even cross my desk? And the more I read about it, the more excited I was about the market, about the place and time we are. And it's funny. Even when I told my CEO in Sacramento that I was leaving him to come out here, he said, well, why Albuquerque? Why not like Denver or San Antonio? And I said, well, because I don't think they need me. So, you know, honestly, and not to paint a picture as if things are so tragic here, but when I say need me, where I can actually make a difference and make an impact and be very involved in a community that's also at a time that it's super excited and hungry to do some cool stuff. So I'll talk about that a little bit. But one of the big pieces of this work and what they wanted, what they asked me to do in the recruitment, which is why I was so excited, was they said, Danielle, Albuquerque Economic Development doesn't have a strategic plan. We're looking for someone who's done that work, and that's kind of my jam. So one of the things, and this is a super spoiler alert, but I don't know if you all realize, it was surprising to me that even though it's on my website and my bylaws, and hence another reason for strategery, right? Is we are set up to support the 4-county region, but I noticed coming into the region that for whatever reason, over time, we've been around a long time. AED has a 60-year history in the region, that some folks didn't realize that we serve the 4-county region. They thought because of our name or other reasons that we only serve the city of Albuquerque. So you can be honest, how many of you thought that we only serve the city of Albuquerque? So I'm seeing some nods. All right, cool. How many of you had no idea what we served to begin with? Like it could have been luncheons. Okay. Anyway, so very good. So, you know, to me, again, this is a really amazing time to think about what our strategy is and how do we serve the entire market truly in a holistic way, because I'll tell you, working with businesses and consultants and people that put companies in locations and companies that are in locations, because by the way, retaining and growing your own companies in a community is just as important. I would say even more important than the big sexy wins. It's really cool to go, yay, and I'm thrilled about Netflix. I'm even more thrilled that they're investing more, because now that's an expanding company that's doubling down in our market, as opposed to just a company that, you know, makes an announcement and maybe doesn't have or hasn't yet developed roots and a really strong connection into the community. Companies that are locally grown and owned tend to invest. They're the ones that pay for little leagues, right? They're the ones that do all those things. So, I'm a big fan of them. And again, when I started out in my first rural community, I did a lot of work. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of times I went to a retail conference and met with like Big 5 Sporting Goods to try to get them to put a Big 5 in our community. I spent years just trying to bring the first Home Depot. And in that community, I did bring Banner Health is a big hospital system in Arizona, and I did bring the first hospital facility, the first medical facility to that community that they ever had, which was really important when you got pushing 50,000 people out in kind of a bubble. You want to have quick healthcare and emergency healthcare. Anyway, so we serve the region, and businesses looking at new markets to go to. They don't ask, tell me exactly what's only in Albuquerque city borders. They go, tell me what's in a 60-minute drive time. Tell me what the labor looks like in the overall market. Let's look at metropolitan statistical area trends. And so our MSA, according to the census, covers those 4 counties. So that's kind of our charter, if you didn't know what we did. So, you know, thinking about what economic developers do. So, you know, Kyle asked, you know, what did you do in the community? Or what do you do in the community? So, you know, this is a really kind of 30,000 foot level. And Kristen, you can be my guidepost here. Tell me what I forget. But really, you know, if you want to put these into big buckets and explain it at the highest level, well, we do a couple of things, right? It's a very, from my perspective, at least modern economic development organizations, you know, they're identifying strengths and weaknesses in the community, but they do that in a very, very data-driven way, right? Because if part of your job is to then brand and market a region, how do you do that without good data? Have any of you ever met a really great, marketing firm or anybody in that type of work that isn't doing, pretty sophisticated research in terms of their target market or their audience, right? So there's a lot of research behind that. A big piece of what we do is also compare ourselves to other markets, right? So how competitive are we? How competitive are we across the board, whether it's business cost or access to labor or those quality of life amenities and pieces? Because at the end of the day, just going to a company and saying, well, it's cheap here is not, really doesn't cut it anymore. And that's certainly not something I want to lead with. I don't want to build our economy by saying, come here, it's cheap. As that's also not necessarily the case, and companies now are very, very sophisticated in their site selection searches. So really the first questions I get now are, tell me about your labor. Tell me about, what talent you have in the market. And by the way, tell me what talent you're going to have in the market in 5 years based on your current plans. And how are you aligning economic development efforts with university systems and, and certifications and trade schools? Very, very critical stuff. And so when we think about it, a lot of folks will think, oh, an economic development group, you just place marketing ads and then you offer incentives to people. And I will say, if that's all we're doing, we're failing. We have to be doing cold lead generation. We have to be building a brand. And we have to also, at the same time that we're doing this kind of traditional sales funnel work, we also have to be community collaborators, bringing everybody to the table and getting everyone to champion and rally around key initiatives and create that consensus. But also figure out, again, where are our gaps, where are our weaknesses, and how do we close those gaps? So, and it could be anything. It could be the labor thing I talked about. Some of the stuff I've worked on before were things like the built environment, right? If we're hearing a lot of people saying it's hard to understand the process in local government, okay, great. So how do we help bridge that gap? How do we look at best practices in other markets and bring those ideas forward? How do we look at creative financing tools? If we need capital in the market, if we don't have enough VC investment, how do we create a targeted campaign and reaching out to VCs and other equity investors to start to grow that piece of the pie? So again, it could be really anything under the sun that drives us in a competitive fashion and closes the gap, because at the end of the day, I want to identify businesses and industry that has a competitive advantage here where I can look at them and go, for all these reasons, this is the best place for you to operate, not for the cash I'm going to throw at you or whatever. Here's the short-term reason you'll be successful here, and then you might want to move on. So we want to make sure that they have a competitive advantage. I'll tell you, like, one of the stories I used to like to tell everybody, because it was kind of an easy one, was everybody's heard about the Amazon HQ2 deal because it was all around the news. All the economic developers, if you were an economic developer when that hit, of course it hit the news right away. But it's not typical for a company to send out a requirement like that to everyone in the country. It was a very, very intentional, competitive thing. And it created tons of chaos. I can tell you, communities around the country spent hundreds of thousands of dollars each on their proposals. And for a lot of them, it was just an exercise in what can they put together. But at the end of the day, the location they picked in Virginia and what the state and the region did there, ultimately, while they already had a lot of talent in the market and a lot of other competitive advantages, and East Coast made sense, so a lot of people were betting on that. At the end of the day, what I heard them say and what I saw in the materials, as well as talking to the economic developers that did the work, was at the end of the day, that market told them, if you come here, here's how we're going to satisfy your talent needs. And by the way, it's funded. And by the way, if you don't come here, we're still doing it. We're still building this pipeline, whether you come here or not. And this is a commitment we've made, and we've already proactively designed this. Wow. So how do we as a region start thinking about the types of investments we want for companies and start building ourselves to already have what they're looking for? And I think that's a huge trick in it. So anyways, that's a little bit about what we do. And then I think the last one on that last slide too, again, don't ever want to skip over the fact that business retention and expansion is huge. I'll tell you, most economic developers over COVID, when I was in Sacramento and then the team here, I got here at the end of October. A lot of economic development organizations, rightfully so, double down on trying to help existing businesses, but also reaching out to industry on business retention and expansion, because there have been tons of deals and activity in terms of companies that have been innovating, or for whatever other reason. Again, you guys could, I'm sure, name them all off, that actually were busier than ever and starting all new lines of business, right? So there is a positive story in that, if you want to kind of go glass half full and look at some of those opportunities and what this, I mean, it really forced rapid acceleration of innovation in a lot of companies. And so we're seeing opportunities with reshoring, onshoring, and technology and all that kind of stuff. I mean, think about Intel's recent decision, definitely driven by a need to have supply chain redundancy here in the US. So really exciting stuff. So those are very important and has been a big piece of our book of business, but a lot of the net new jobs into the market in the last year. So not to be discounted. And I will also say your existing companies are the best ones to help you find new companies to bring in their supply chain or in their network. And they're also the first ones that are going to help advise you on what you need to do to fill those gaps, right? I don't know the answer and what the manufacturing sector needs. I have to go talk to them. So if I knew that, then I might, be an entrepreneur, and nobody needs that. Nobody needs that. All right, so this is kind of a little shifting gears, but Kyle had asked about or put in the list, let's talk a little bit about leadership and why do you want to be a leader? And I think, I don't know, I don't think I ever sat back and said, and I don't every day consider myself necessarily a leader. I consider myself, pretty dedicated and scrappy and very, very passionate about my work. So maybe that's a piece as I talk off the cuff here a little bit. I think if you find work that you're really passionate about, that can lend itself naturally to leadership, and it can exacerbate those qualities if you have them. Not everybody, wants to be a leader or is naturally going to be a leader. There's always those schools of thought on you can develop anybody into leadership or you can't. I think that you've got to have a desire also to put yourself out there. And to me, one of the keys is being somebody who's willing to make decisions and willing to be the one that's accountable if the decision goes wrong, right? And also to be there to lead and protect your team. So I tell my team that a lot. I go, you know what? I mean, at the end of the day, I'm going to push you hard. But if anything goes wrong, it's my butt. If we don't succeed, it's on me because I am the leader here and I've got your back and I'm going to support you and we're going to charge forward together. Because that's the role you take on with that. So let's see some of the highs and lows. And it was funny. I was thinking about this last night because that's when I was full transparency putting this together and thinking about this. Because again, that's how it goes when you're really busy and trying to put together a strategic plan for a region in 3 months. By the way, we're going to roll it out at the end of June. So yeah, I would really hope you all keep an eye on that. One of the things I did, and I think this is just to me, it's a fun story. When I was in my first city in Maricopa, figuring out, and again, brand new government employee, don't have a clue what I'm doing, learning about economic development. I'm just headstrong and I'm used to being in charge because, darn it. And when I worked at the Chili's on Mill Avenue at Arizona State, I was the lead server, by God, so, anyway, by the way, if I'd not waited tables, I would have stayed shy. I think it honestly changed my life. Everybody should have to work in the service industry. At some point. But so in my first job, here I am. I'm very young. My first public sector job, and I'm learning a lot. And there's another gal that shows up, and she's with the Fellows program at Arizona State, and she's going to be, by God, she walked in the door and said, "I'm going to be the city manager here in 5 years, and I'm going to run this place." And she's an intern, planning intern. Absolutely headstrong, just like me, like crazy type A, and just falls to the wall kind of girl. We butted heads. We probably almost got in a fist fight, probably several times, maybe not that extreme, but we were very, very strong for working together for a couple of years. Well, she went on to work in another community in the region and then moved to even a third community. And this was 5 years later in the West Valley in the Phoenix market as an assistant city manager. We'd always stayed in contact. Fast forward, she is one of my favorite people in the world and one of the people I respect the most because, again, she challenged me and pushed me, and we did that to each other. We ended up getting back together just as friends offline, working in government in the region, and we founded a Women Leading Government for all of Arizona group, which it's now, and I think it's like 8th year, and it gets 500 women from across the state that come together. And it's not a, women's issues, women against, against men in any way. It's absolutely a, how do we empower and create mentorships among women leaders? Because there are some unique aspects of that in government. So it was kind of modeled after a group that was actually founded in California that we'd kind of both parlayed into. So being people who, both saw ourselves as having this, long-term professional, vision for being in government. We founded that together. So I'm unbelievably proud about that. She actually since left that city and 2 years ago founded her own professional coaching and team building group and is absolutely killing it. So you never know where life is going to take you. But again, figuring out professional certifications and really striving to absolutely, not stop in terms of education and be the best I can be in my profession, and realize that even when I think I'm good, I still have something to learn, right? The second you think you're the smartest in the room is the day that, that you fail. But one of the things I've been very fortunate to do is also offer time and coach people in the profession on how to get their certification and support them and advocate for them. So it was a lot of fun when I was in Scottsdale. I rewrote all the job descriptions for everyone saying that certification was preferred. And then I put it in their professional development plan for them to get it. And I've got a team member here. He's going to be pursuing his pretty soon too. As economic developers and actually as government with the International City County Managers Association, which I was part of, as well as the International Economic Development Council, we have codes of ethics that we abide by and follow. And I do think that is really critical as well in terms of how you treat projects, how you treat the community, how you act ethically, especially when you are in a position where you've been entrusted with the public good. That's something that you can't take lightly. This is not your money. This is not your resource. It's the organizations, and forget the organizations. It's really the publics or your investors who are investing in you actually doing something good with their resources. So it is a big responsibility. So I take that very seriously. And right now it's also fascinating. Have you ever seen like some of the crazy stuff people will do ethically? So I am right now serving as one of the board members for IEDC on the ethics review committee. So essentially, if somebody does something really crazy and illegal and they're a member of our organization, we convene and talk about whether we're going to kick them out. And literally we'll do a press release to say why we kick them out, because we don't want anybody to, it gets that serious in the profession. We literally had somebody like embezzling money, but faking invoices like they were going to our association and then putting the money in their own bank account. It is unbelievable. Anyway, so I take that very seriously. And I think that's whether you have a formal professional code of ethics or just your own personal code of ethics, it's really important to go back to and revisit all the time. In terms of lows, I was thinking about that. And I think the good thing is anything that's never gone right or didn't go perfect or I wasn't super proud of, I feel like if you don't make mistakes, you will not learn. So with my team and friends, partners, and people in my family, whatever, you have to also be willing to let people make mistakes. Even sit back and grit your teeth when they're making one. As long as they're not driving a car off a cliff or they're going to get arrested. It's good, right? Because that's an experience of understanding and then learning on your own. If you coach someone to the nth degree to where everything is perfect, then they're never going to know what it feels like to accomplish that on their own. So I think that's a big piece. But I will say some of the things that I would maybe regret the most are when I knew better. So the longer I've been in the workforce and doing things, and I've noticed it's evolved over time, but it's always been there. Trusting your gut. So the biggest mistakes I've ever made in all are when my gut wasn't right on something. And I was like, I just don't know if I like this, but I'll go along with it because, they're on my board or they're important in the community or whatever. It's not really wrong. I just don't like it. Or I just don't feel like that's the right approach. Those have always been the mistakes. And one of them has been bad hiring choices. So I've had, maybe two or three of those in my career when I went, I knew they probably weren't right for the team, but I did it anyway because I was so desperate to have help. Worst mistakes ever, and not even for you, for that individual. It doesn't mean they're a bad individual, but they just may not be a good fit. It may not be a good role for them. And so I think, on the flip side, the good things I've done for people is said, you know what, you're great, but this isn't going to be a good fit for you. And I'm doing you a favor by steering you in a different direction. I really am. So thinking about that and just being really honest, it's hard to be honest with people about things like that. And when somebody maybe is on the team or in the organization or involved in a volunteer group you have, right? It is a really hard conversation to tell someone, you're here, but I think you need to move on. But I've had to do that in my career. It's very hard. But then when it's done, I've also had the opportunity to help people get in a better place, which feels really good too. So I have folks that have worked for me in the past or worked with me in the past that moved on, and I'm really proud of where they are now. And I will say, failing to raise the flag on an issue that ultimately affected others. This is what I was thinking about last night. Like, do I share this? But this is a leadership group, so I will. I'm trying to think without revealing exactly. I will say, so when I was in Scottsdale, at the end of the day, there was someone with an association in the region. So this is like I don't know, it's hard to explain without, again, too much detail, but kind of a Me Too movement. This person came to an event, drunk as a skunk, spring training game. We have a lot of cool spring training games. This is an influential person in the community. And he walks up to the person I'm dating, and we're sitting there, and he asks them how good I am over and over. Yeah. Anyway, I know that's like super crazy and uncomfortable, but I'm like, all right, well, I'm glad my boyfriend, my date at the time, didn't deck him. He was a nice guy. But you're kind of going, wow, is this really happening? I raised the flag with their board of directors, with their key leadership. My regret on that is I did not insist on action. 6 months later, his entire team pulled harassment against him. And then it cost the organization about 150 grand to get him out of there. And it was pretty ugly. So, thinking about, again, when you're sitting there and going, this isn't right. I will say, I probably had an opportunity to be even more insistent, and it won't happen again. I'll tell you that, but it's amazing when you see things like that. So I guess, a low there would be, it still goes back to trust your gut, trust your own ethical and moral compass, and don't worry about it. It's his fault if he looks bad and gets fired and embarrasses himself, so, feel free to make that call and do that. So that was just, thought I'd give you guys, there's a little bit of maybe a TMI, but I thought you might find that one interesting. It was a pivotal moment when you really go, okay, now I know how I'm going to deal with things like that in the future. And thinking about leadership, right? Thanks, Aaron. Thinking about leadership, keeping an eye out for other younger professionals who also maybe could experience things like that, whether it's that or somebody trying to get them to do something just not ethically in terms of a business decision. Oh, you can approve this and it's okay. Or you can, it doesn't have to be something that makes you uncomfortable in that way, and comfortable in any way that compromises you, making sure that they know that they should be empowered and that you have their back, and will also guide and protect them in that way. So anyway, kind of wild. So let's see, those leadership highs and lows. And I'll give you guys a couple of call to actions. And I will say one thing, that this happened, I had a really great mentor that's done this for me for years. And it was almost like I go, well, I'm sure everybody has that kind of mentor, and maybe they do, maybe they don't. I mean, definitely ask for mentors, ask for people, but I think there's also really wonderful relationships that evolve. So I had a boss at the Heard Museum that she was amazing. I mean, first of all, this woman got me a job when she probably, shouldn't have been. Like, she snuck it in and was able to hire me like at pennies, because I was still, like waitressing at night because, they weren't paying me enough to even pay my bills. But here I am working at this museum. She hired me. She would let me run with anything I wanted and let me learn and got creative and did things. But what she sat me down on very early on is she said, and she was one of those like self-help book nuts, right? Like, if I saw What Color Is My Parachute on her shelf one more time, I was gonna shake her to death. But Lisa was amazing. She now works for the food bank in Arizona, has done tremendous work, has worked for a lot of nonprofits. But she sat me down and said, okay, what's your 5-year plan professionally and personally? And I'm like, well, what? And she goes, we're gonna review this every year for the rest of your life, as long as I know you, and you're gonna revise it and update it. And I'm like, oh, well, that's weird. But I did it. And I will tell you, I got my master's degree when I said I was going to, because I put it on paper and I had to look her in the eye and say I was going to do it. And, and she has just been this amazing guidepost for me. But I also learned that I had to do that for myself as well. So every year I look at those goals. Sometimes you hit them, sometimes you don't. We'll see if I lose the COVID-5 this year, it's on the list. but so having that, and whether you force yourself to do it or even just go to somebody and go, look, I need to be able to hold myself accountable. Will you review this list with me and coach me a little bit and walk me through it? Is an awesome, awesome thing to do. And I really credit, she didn't make me get any of it done. She just forced me to be accountable to myself, which was pretty awesome. So lead by example always. That's, I think about that every day. And there are days, nobody's perfect, right? So I have a lot of days where I catch myself. I'll tell you, this morning, I had a call with my team and they're asking me like, what about this and what about this? And I said, you know what? I don't have time for that. I'm super stressed out. I've got some big deadlines I'm trying to hit this week. And, I kind of caught myself and I was like, you know what? I'm sorry, guys. I need to explain more. Like, why am I stressed out? What's going on? And then I had that conversation with them and they were like, cool, you're human, and that's okay. And so realizing that, but also, leading by example in a way that you would want to have somebody explain it to you, which again, seems like common sense, but doesn't always occur to you if you're not checking yourself. Again, paying it forward in your chosen profession. So I do spend a lot of time encouraging and coaching people that if they want to be in economic development, how do we get you in? I'm a huge proponent of bringing on interns or anybody that wants to learn about what we're doing. And if they don't become a career economic developer, fine, but maybe they walk out of here with a big appreciation for it. And someday when they're CEOing a company or something like that, they invest in their local economic development efforts, So there's all those different things. You never know where it's going to come back, I'll tell you. And the older you get, the smaller the world gets. It was funny. We were doing a launch event with CBRE. I don't know if any of you saw, we did a joint report. There were some articles on it and it was really great. It was just about talent. It's a marketing ploy, but we worked together on it. We did a hybrid luncheon event at El Pinto last Thursday. So the event is over and this guy walks up to me and I'm like, well, this is weird. Like, I know you. And he's like, hey, it's Jeff from Arizona. I knew you with this other company and now I'm with Goodwill and I'm running the New Mexico market. And like, you never know. If I had been a total B to Jeff when I was in Scottsdale, I would not have this great relationship. So you never know when people are going to reconnect and markets are smaller than you think. So looking outside your own bubble, I think is really, really good. So I keep telling everybody in this market, I'm not here to tell us or any of us, because I'm us now, right? How somebody else did it. So that's how we have to do it. But we need to know what our competition is doing. And we need to always realize that there are cool, innovative things going on out there that can inspire us. So be a constant student and always be out there, looking for cool, creative ideas and then how you can adapt them and make them your own. So I spend a lot of time with other professionals around the country going, how'd you do that? How'd you do that? What are you doing? And really figuring that out. And then at the end of the day, Kyle, one of the questions on you guys' list is what can these guys do? Be a positive champion of your community and its assets. One of the things I've learned quickly in New Mexico, which I don't think is a surprise to anybody, we've had some great people on our team in the past really work on campaigns on this, is tell the positive story, tell the right story about the community. Because I'll tell you, I hear a lot here about crime and homelessness. Absolutely. But if you go to San Francisco, this looks like heaven, okay? So when you think about, again, this is why you have to look in context of other markets. So we really need to talk about all those wonderful assets and the great things going on here, and go out and champion it and tell everybody else about it. And, show your pride, but do it in an intentional way. And I think that's the other piece, always thinking about that intentionally. You sit at a bar next to somebody at an airport, and because you're like on your way to Cabo or whatever you're doing, tell them why, this is such a tremendous place. Because it was interesting. I had gotten a couple comments from a few random people going, well, I hope you like it here enough to stay. And I said, no, you should be telling me you'd be an idiot to ever leave. And that's what you should be telling me, because it's true. So anyway, I know I didn't think I could fill the time, but somehow I did, Kyle. So I'm going to shut up. You guys can throw any questions you want at me. Please do.
Awesome. Thanks, Danielle. Appreciate it. Do a little virtual round of applause. I would encourage anybody, either you can put a question in the chat or feel free to come off of mute.
Kyle, this is Lawrence. I hope everyone is doing well. First of all, let me thank Alexis for your leadership. I'm grateful to be with the young professionals of Albuquerque, and thank you, Kyle, for your leadership and your commitment throughout the years. I'm here because of our connection. Danielle, let me welcome you to Albuquerque, and I want to thank you for this important opportunity. I'm with the University of New Mexico, and I appreciate your passion and your contributions. I did not realize that you all were serving several counties and making a difference in New Mexico. And I'm curious, with your extensive experience and the different communities that you've worked with, how would you capture the essence of the communities you're serving, some of the assets and strengths, and then some of the challenges and opportunities that in order to overcome those? Thank you.
Oh goodness. So how do I capture them? Well, I'll give you kind of a cliff notes, because there's obviously too many details to explain, but that's a big piece. And it's kind of strategic planning 101. The first thing we did with our strategic plan effort was part of our consulting team did just that and interviewed people from around the region on their perceptions on the whole SWOT, right? So asked them what they thought our strengths were, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and it's been very insightful. Some of them are very interesting perceptions, where when we ask people, what do you think our biggest assets are? They're like climate, and I'm going, great, our biggest asset is something we can't do anything about. Not, I mean, unless you really, if you can affect climate change, then yes, but so I was like, okay, we've got to have more assets than that. So we're digging deeper into those things, and there are a lot of wonderful assets there. So anyway, other than listing them, I think it's probably easier to explain to you that's why that's such a critical piece. And we interviewed folks from, Rio Rancho to Las Lunas, all shapes and sizes in between, trade associations. Actually, Lawrence, you'll dig. I have actually presented to the entire to President Stokes's leadership team, as well as the entire Dean's Council, on the work we're doing on the strategy, so that we can align.
Great, thanks. Any other questions?
Any
I was like,
advice for me? Well, I mean, if you have a question, Kyle, but I would ask, as we close, does anybody have advice for me? Because that's the other thing that, sometimes we forget when we've been in leadership roles and we're in positions like this, asking others. So.
Hi, my name's Holly. I'm the event director at Albuquerque Business First. And
yes, hey.
Good to meet you face to face. I know we talked a little over email before, but I'm actually a boomerang back to Albuquerque. I lived in Los Angeles the last 2 years. So I don't know that I have any new advice, but I want to say keep doing what you're doing with speaking about the pride for the community, because I think that it's really easy to look at those assets that we want to make improvements on, but there's so much that Albuquerque and the greater area has to provide. So I think the community will appreciate that. And I think that you'll really make good relationships by highlighting those aspects.
Thank you.
Building off of that too, I completely agree with Holly and Danielle. I think doing things like this, right? I mean, we're all going to walk away from this knowing you a little bit better, knowing Sophie, your dog, a little bit better. But really, I think the work, because obviously you all are doing incredible work over there. And I think, as you've known since you've been in Albuquerque since October, I mean, this town and this community is all about relationships, right? And they mean so much to us. So I think you're getting out there, you're doing what you're doing. So once we can all go to some of Holly's events, I think that'll definitely help too. But I think just keep staying engaged with the groups that maybe you wouldn't necessarily think of right off the top of your head.
Thank you. One thing I didn't put in that I can send you, Kyle, or just, keep an eye on our events and our social media, but we do an ambassador training program. And the whole idea is to do a deeper dive into what economic developers do and what trends we're seeing in the market. So the content will change. And we do these trainings every couple months throughout the year. Previously, for whatever reason, AED only let people that were paying us money, that were investors, come to these programs. And I go, okay, but don't we want everybody to know what we're doing? Don't we need to be just a little bit more open about that, while we still have to bring member value? So anybody is welcome. I think we're scheduling the next one for June 24 in the afternoon. So if any of you are interested, keep an eye for that announcement and registration. Then what we do is for our membership companies, then we're going to have like more of a certification process. And those are kind of official certified ambassadors that then get to engage in meetings with clients and other folks and engage at a higher level. But that would be a great way for you all to keep an eye. If you're like, hey, every couple months, I'd really like to know what the heck you guys are up to over at AED. It's a great way. Cool.
Alrighty, well, if there's nothing else, I'll leave you with two quick fun questions, Danielle.
Hey, Kyle.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Hey, how are you? I appreciate being able to be on here. I just wanted to chime, before you were closing that out, I did want to chime in on what Danielle just talked about with the ambassador program. That's a really great way for people in YPA to get involved and seeing what the AED does. You know, Danielle, I've seen you 3 times now in a week. As you guys were just alluding to, talking about, you know, going to different events. I was at a crew, the Commercial Real Estate of Women event with Danielle this last week, as well as attended online the AED program that she just did as well, which was extremely informative. And Alexis, I don't know if you remember, we helped you build out your rage room here next door to my office. It's right next door. So
I do remember those were exciting times.
yeah, but anyway, I just wanted to give Danielle a thumbs up on this presentation and letting you guys know that ambassador program is really a good way to get involved with AED and developers and see what they're doing. So I would encourage people in YPA to attend that. So thank you. Oh, I'm also a commissioner for the city of Albuquerque, as I was going to point out to some of the people in here who didn't know that. So knowing all these different people from different various things that they do and working with Danielle and different aspects of not just our profession, but the other things that we do outside of our profession. I'm a general contractor by trade, but we do so many other things outside of that, and how we all stay engaged with each other is super important. So I will throw that out there as well.
I just put a link to register. I found it on our site. It's in the chat.
Awesome, thank you. Danielle, can we get coffee soon? I feel like I could definitely want to pick your brain. I feel like I could learn a lot from you.
All day.
Yeah.
I'm happy to. Schedule permitting, but let's get it on the calendar. And I always tell everybody that it may take me a couple weeks with my schedule, but let's get it on the calendar and then it'll happen. I'm one of those, like, that's also how I police myself. If I don't put it on my calendar, it'll never happen. So yeah, let's do that.
It's true. I'm relatively new to economic development, and there's still so much that I don't know.
Love to do it.
It's a lot.
Yeah. And I'll hook you up with other really smart people too here locally and around the country. So put my email in there. Anybody, please, dcasey@abq.org. So give me a shout. I do have to run because now I've got a policy committee with the New Mexico Chamber.
Awesome. Hey, Danielle, thank you so much. And kind of understanding too that you're a busy woman right now. So we really appreciate the time today. And for all of the YPA members out there, remember we have a couple more events this month. But Danielle, we'll all wave and say goodbye, and everyone.
Thank you. No, it was absolutely my pleasure and my honor. Thank you all. Have a great afternoon. Bye.